We're here today embedded with the IDF in the scene of one of the biggest counterterrorism operations that has taken place in a very long time by the IDF. And the floor underneath the mosque is the regional firing range. This is where the local young terrorists were training. The IDF has been operating here since early in this year. It's about 7 months now of an ongoing operation in which over 1,000 IEDs have been removed. Gaza taught us a terrible lesson. When terror embeds inside a civilian population, in the schools above, in the tunnels below, an entire region is taken hostage. Whole neighborhoods become launchpads. Propaganda replaces truth. Children grow up in the shadow of a rifle. That is the nightmare we refuse to let take root right here in Judea and Samaria, Ayosh as we call it in Hebrew. And this week, Israeli forces moved first. 90 wanted suspects were detained across the sector. A deep arrest inside Jenin, a key operative and an accomplice taken alive. Tables piled with seized hardware, a Negev light machine gun, M16s, M4s, pistols, improvised explosives, and the cache trails that feed all of that terrorism mechanism. In other raids, forces flipped the script, helicopters dropping reserve infantry into the heart of hostile terrain. Armored teams sealing the roads, weapons and terror funds pulled before they could be turned into funerals of the innocent. Terrorism and terror has a playbook. Burrow into crowded cities, intimidate the locals, flood the streets with guns and money, and then, when the cameras are ready, strike at Israel's roads, buses, and towns. If we look away, Ayosh, Judea and Samaria becomes Gaza 2.0. But if we move first, we cut the fuse before it reaches our families. Today I'm embedded with the IDF deep inside of Jenin, heading into the heart of the city to see this week's seizures up close and to understand what these cells were building, who moved the weapons, which routes were mapped, which communities they targeted. This isn't about politics, it's about prevention of terrorism. It's the difference between an ambush that happens and one that simply doesn't. Stay with me for the truth from inside Judea and Samaria. And before we begin, like, subscribe, and share. Help us get this reality past the slogans and into the light. Okay, it is early morning. We're here in the battalion command, about to enter into Jenin. Here are the military vehicles that are taking us. Some heavy machinery right over here to really get a look at what the IDF's been doing in there in the last couple of days, specifically the amount of weaponry caught, and we're traveling heavy with quite a substantial amount of soldiers and equipment. Okay, we are getting out of a very, very long and bumpy ride. This is the Jenin refugee camp. There's the city proper underneath. Over there, here are the lovely soldiers that are protecting us, and then the houses around us. The Middle East is complicated. Evil thrives here and wears many different faces.
But in the middle of it all is Israel, a tiny democracy fighting for its life against extremist regimes and terrorist armies that glorify death, not life.
And yet somehow the world calls us the aggressor.
Because evil has hijacked the narrative and twisted the truth.
And the West? Well, too often it believes the lies because comprehending such evil is hard. And when people can't understand it, they misplace the blame.
This battle isn't just about Israel. This is a threat to the entire free world.
Because when the truth dies, freedom dies with it.
So stand with Israel, defend the truth, and make sure it gets out to the entire world. Go to www.tbn.org/standwithisrael and donate now. Our future depends on it. This is the Jenin refugee camp. We're here today embedded with the IDF in the scene of one of the biggest counterterrorism operations that has taken place in a very long time by the IDF. What you can see around me, and you'll see throughout these clips, is an incredible amount of engineering work that was done in the Jenin refugee camp We just heard from a source within the IDF about the extent of the terrorism infrastructure in this region. The majority of the population of this refugee camp was involved in manufacturing terrorism infrastructure, creating weaponry, or being at least sympathetic and active in their support of Hamas and its affiliates. Every road had IEDs in it. In fact, the IDF is reporting that about 1,000 IEDs were pulled out of the Jenin refugee camp and the Jenin city area by Engineering Corps IDF forces. On top of that, an incredible number of weapon manufacturing, weapon infrastructure facilities and personnel was involved in this place. And it's just testament to how deep the terrorism infrastructure runs. Another important thing, I asked the IDF representative who was with us, what would happen if the IDF wasn't here? And he said very clearly, without batting an eye, he said the terrorism infrastructure in this part of Judea and Samaria was planning to carry out an attack similar to the attacks of October 7th in the Gaza Strip. And because of our presence here, they were unable to carry it out. This is the big mosque of Jenin. There's a substantial amount of terrorism infrastructure and training for terrorists, all taking place within this top floor of the building and the second floor of the building. I'm right underneath the floor of the mosque, which is right above me. And the floor underneath the mosque is the regional firing range. This is where the local young terrorists were training, prepping to fire on IDF soldiers. And the IDF came in here, they found on the walls behind me targets of target practice. And this whole floor is filled with cartridges on the floor from AK-47s. We know how to identify them. The walls are shot up by people that were shooting out of the windows. The entire building was used as a headquarters for local terrorism. There's very little in the refugee camp inside Jenin that is not terrorism related. The majority of the population that was in this camp of about 10 to 12,000 people were involved in terrorism, both in infrastructure, in training, or in creating tools of terrorism. So according to IDF intelligence, things are changing. The fact that the IDF has been operating here in an intensive way and removing much of the terrorism infrastructure, being weakened, and a different type of leadership and a different trend in social media and discourse will come up in the young population. The IDF is operating intensively here, helps remove that terrorism infrastructure, change the discourse, and create a future that might not be led by terrorists, and especially terrorists that are funded by Iran and outside of the boundaries of this country. And this mosque has evidence of terrorism infrastructure, terrorism activities happening throughout this refugee camp, but specifically both in the mosques, in the schools, in the UN facilities. They all have terrorism infrastructure embedded deep within them. Hamas violates every single code of international law and warfare law by operating within civilian population, within hospitals, which is their favorite, within UNRWA and UN facilities, and of course within mosques. There's nothing that's holy to them, nothing that they won't do to cause harm both to their people and to the people of Israel. One more important thing that I want to tell you is the fact that this entire area behind me, the Jenin refugee camp, had a massive amount of terrorism infrastructure in it. The IDF, and I've stated this before, the IDF had to systematically pull up much of the road infrastructure here and destroy many of the homes and buildings because they carried within them a very substantial amount of terrorism infrastructure. What does that mean? That means about 1,000 IEDs on the sides of the road. It means bomb labs. It means manufacturing facilities for makeshift weapons. It means weapons caches and stashes throughout this region. So much so that the IDF had to systematically go through many of these places and many of these homes to really tear them out and remove that infrastructure. And one more important thing is the IDF is also involved in rebuilding this area. They're repaving roads and rebuilding roads so the people, when they come back, will have a better infrastructure to operate in.
In the heart of the Galilee, where biblical history meets the modern miracle of Israel, the miracles of Jesus surround you. Welcome to David's Harp Hotel and Studios in the Galilee, a joint venture of TBN and Israel Tours, a luxury retreat designed to serve the body and soul of its guests. Our spacious and comfortable rooms open up to the breathtaking views of the Sea of Galilee and the Mountain of Beatitudes. Stepping beyond the comfort of your room, you find yourself following the footsteps of Jesus, Peter's home at Capernaum, sailing the Sea of Galilee, and the transformational message of the Mount of Beatitudes. Returning at the end of the day, our dedicated staff and facilities will help you relax and soak in the peace. David's Harp Hotel and Studios in the Galilee, a sanctuary on earth where the Bible comes to life. Ask your travel agent or pastor to make the David's Harp Galilee Resort your home base in Israel.
The IDF has been operating here since early in this year. It's about 7 months now of an ongoing operation in which over 1,000 IEDs have been removed. Countless weapon caches, countless terrorists were removed from this area, but also cash. Now, the IDF tells us something very interesting. Their goal is not to destroy this area. Their goal is to allow life to go back to normal in this area. The level of devastation here is nothing like what you've seen in the Gaza Strip. Also, obviously, the depth of terrorism infrastructure is not as intense. But the IDF has only reportedly ruined about between 150 to 300 homes in this refugee camp out of over 1,500. In each one of these homes was vast terrorism infrastructure or fighting forces that were embedded in the place. So again, Jenin is the place where terrorism tries to enter into Israel, where the global proxy war of global jihad and global terrorism tries to gain a foothold inside this land, and where it tries to go from here into the rest of Judea and Samaria, and then into Israel proper. This is a very, very unique place geographically, politically, as far as terrorism goes. And that's why the IDF has embedded so much effort, has invested so much intelligence and operational forces in this area to really root out the deep-rooted terrorism that exists in this place. Now, it's not one single organization. It's not just Hamas or Fatah. It's a mixture of various organizations where the people have a very loose affiliation and tie to them. Some people might be Islamic Jihad, some might be Hamas, some might be PLO, but they move and flow in and out of these different organizations in a very fluid manner. Their affiliation is more to the geography, the topography of the place, to the clan association that they have, versus a very specific or direct link to a terrorist organization. And that is, in a nutshell, the picture of terrorism in Judea and Samaria. It's now heavily influenced by outside forces, but also not strongly affiliated and without the structure of hierarchy that traditional terrorist organizations used to have. And that makes things more difficult, but also allows the IDF to really do a grassroots operation and eliminate terrorism from this part of Judea and Samaria. What you've just seen, what I've been experiencing these last hours in Jenin, specifically in the Jenin refugee camp, is evidence of what is truly happening in this part of the world. It's a combination of incredible external threats. The Iranians, other terrorist movements, Islamic Jihad in the global sense of it, trying to come and infiltrate into Israel. And right behind me, this is the place where it all happens, right here in northern Samaria. And the reason is, we're close on the one side, on the eastern border, to Jordan, to the smuggling routes that are attempting to bring in weapons and explosives into this part of the world. We're also at the same place where the city centers of northern Samaria are those that absorb some of the Iranian cash and influence that is trying to indoctrinate and fund the terrorism machine of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, and of course, in Gaza. But we're also close enough to the Israeli civilian population that these people want to feed that evil into Israel and into the rest of the Jewish and Palestinian villages and cities in this region. And that is why the IDF has been operating with so much effort, so much delicacy in this area. What you've seen is evidence of how careful the IDF is not to destroy homes, infrastructure, or lives of our enemy population. We've gone through painstaking and careful work to make sure that the only thing we hurt are the terrorists and their infrastructure. In fact, the IDF told us during this visit that there were almost no civilian casualties inside, or non-combative casualties, in this ongoing war in Judea and Samaria, except for a handful. And although that is, of course, lamentable, we've gone through extreme efforts to make sure the only people we hurt are those who deserve it, the terrorists. Now, that is the face of Israel in warfare. An army that carefully, painstakingly, at a great cost, makes sure that it doesn't hurt anyone that does not deserve to be hurt. That we fight against terrorists and not against our friends. That we fight against militants and combatants and never hurt civilian population. And at the same time, that we use a swift and strong arm against the evil that is so prevalent, that is so existent in this part of the world. The global jihad movement, the desire of the Iranians to destroy the peace and the quality of life of our people, and the desire of that mindset to really bring an end to the miracle that is Israel. And this is what we're fighting. This is what the IDF is fighting in Jenin. That's what it's fighting throughout Judea and Samaria. This is what we've seen throughout this ongoing, almost 2-year-long war. The IDF, the people of Israel, fighting for what's good, for what is right. And an evil that exists outside of the boundaries of our country that is trying to force that ideology on this region to break the miracle that is this land, the careful balance that is this land. We need you to be aware of that, to spread the truth, and to pray for what's happening in this region.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.